Tom was like, don't do it. Don't do it, Dawn. But there's a very specific reason I want to talk about these 3 most common critical comments, and I'll tell you what that is coming up next. Well, hi, I'm Dawn from The Minimal Mom. Our family has lived as minimalist for about 6 years now, going on 7, which is hard to believe. And so, yes, we've heard it all, and especially once we started putting ourselves out there on YouTube, it's just par for the course, right? Comes with the territory, critical comments. And honestly, mostly they don't get to me because I feel like a lot of times they're taken out of context, or they're just, I don't know, like it's just really not that big of a deal. But there are like 3 recurring comments that are critical that just sometimes get on my nerves. And the only reason that I want to talk about these today is because if you are also on this path or pursuing a more simplistic lifestyle, most likely at some point you're going to hear these directed towards you as well. And so I thought it might just be helpful to hear how we respond. Not how we respond on YouTube or when someone says it on Instagram, but how we actually respond to the real life people in our world that have said these things to us. So there's 3 comments that come up related to minimalism, simple living, and how we choose to go about that. But there is one comment that I get quite a bit here on YouTube in regards to like our video production, and that has to do with me not looking at the lens but looking at the viewfinder. And so this is the camera that we've made until recently almost every single one of our YouTube videos on. It's a Canon G7X, and as you can see, the viewfinder is right above the camera. And so in almost every video, you can tell that unless I am like super on it that day, I am looking above the camera and not at the lens. And what's hard is that I love this camera. I would recommend this camera to anybody, but the autofocus on it will sometimes jump around. And so I've tried to like tip this back once I'm sure like the lighting's good and everything, but the autofocus would sometimes jump to like, especially if we're in the kitchen for whatever reason, it'd like jump to the stove, it would jump to the seat behind us. And so if I wasn't looking at the viewfinder, there was a good chance that I could go a whole video and it's not in focus, which is a huge bummer and has happened. And so I just would leave this up to make sure the lighting wasn't jumping around. You know, you get like that weird piece of hair, like, you know how it is. But it is very difficult. If you've ever tried this, it is very difficult to train yourself to look at the lens of the camera and not here because you're just drawn to it. And so now I can show you the camera we've been using recently, which we're just kind of testing out, and I'm not sold on it yet, but I'll show you. This is a Sony ZV-1, and the viewfinder is to the side and the lens is here. It's too dark right now. So recently now I've been looking to the side instead of above it, and I think that's probably worse actually. So I'm trying is all I can say about that one. I'm really trying to get better at looking at the lens because I do notice that it's more powerful when I'm looking you in the eye and I'm looking at you directly. And so I really am trying to get better at that. Tom and Diana remind me of it on a daily basis. And so you're not alone in being annoyed by that. Okay, so with that being said, let's talk into the 3 most critical comments when it comes to our lifestyle, choosing to live like minimalists, and also though how we go about it. And so I would say the comment that just frustrates me the most would be the comment that says, like recently we were showing our dumpster bag and getting a dumpster and oh, you're filling up the landfill. And so whenever there's a comment that implies that, well, you should have donated that, you should have found a way to use it, you shouldn't just throw things away, that bothers me because my value system has changed so much that I don't put things above people and our mental well-being. And so how I prioritize things right now is your and mine, our mental health, emotional health, physical health, like our whole person well-being, along with the relationships that we have, our spiritual beliefs. Like, so those are way up here. And then I put shelter, food, like those physical needs that we have to have. And then down here is all of the other stuff. Do I care about the earth? Of course. But how could any of us have the bandwidth to really care about the earth and do something about it if we are in survival mode? If this up here isn't in place, we can't give a whatever about the earth and protecting the earth and leaving it in a better place for our kids. And so I think for all of us, there's this like initial big purge that we have to do to get to a place where our house is manageable again. And even like, yeah, we rented a dumpster recently, and yeah, we pretty much filled it up, which we'll show you on Friday. But that was almost 5 years in the making. And a lot of that stuff was given to us. We didn't necessarily invite into our home. But again, even with that stuff, I chose to protect the relationship. So if my grandma offered me something, I took it. If we're buying a new camper and somebody's like, we really want your family to have this extra stuff, we took it. Like, we didn't say, oh, no, we're minimalist, we don't want that. We always put the relationship with people above. And honestly, if we didn't take it, they were going to throw it away anyways, right? And so at some point, all of this stuff on the earth is going to get discarded, most likely, right? I mean, very little of it actually will fully stand the test of time. And so for me, again, because my value system has changed so much, I'm okay. Like, if you have to do whatever you have to do to get stuff out of your house so that you can have your peace of mind back, I think we do whatever we have to do. Now, okay, so we've had people say this to us, right? Like, oh, you're just throwing that away. And so how do you respond to that though? Recently, I've been saying, it does not feel good to throw this stuff away, but our donation centers are overflowing. And so I'm not going to pass it on and make somebody else have to deal with it. I'm just going to deal with it myself. And I'm certainly not going to keep it in my house where it's going to continue to cause me stress. And so if you want to get like really scientific, you can say, well, I'm glad you brought that up, because did you know that when we have a lot of clutter around us, it actually raises the stress hormones in our body? And I know that's not good for my health. Would that be good for your health? No. So yeah, unfortunately, it didn't feel good to throw it away, but right now we just got to do what we got to do. Or honestly, if it's a person that you're not really in regular relationship, you can be like, yeah, it was unfortunate, but we did what we did. You don't owe them any explanation, right? But if it's someone you're trying to bring along for the journey, then you might want to go into a little bit more depth why you're doing what you're doing. So the second question then, that we definitely got this one, especially in the beginning, was like, well, so you're just going to get rid of all your stuff now? And, implying that now all of a sudden we don't care about stuff. Or I think a lot of times people feel like we're choosing this lifestyle just to be extreme, right? It's a fad. We saw something on the internet and now all of a sudden we're just jumping in for no good reason other than we want to be able to call ourselves minimalist. And what's hard about this, and what I realized when people would say this to us, so like we had a neighbor come over one time and she was just like, oh, so you just like got rid of all your stuff? And it was like, well, yes, but we were strategic about it, right? For me, this is actually where this idea of inventory has been very helpful to explain to other people. Because what I've realized, although this question sounds very critical, I mean, I would feel hurt, defensive when somebody would say this to me. What I've realized is that for most often, they were looking out for my well-being and for the well-being of our kids. They didn't want anything, to affect our children. So now it's taken me a little while to find this language, right? But how I like to explain it is just with this concept of inventory. And I say, what I've realized is that everything in our house is inventory that I have to manage. And, especially when Tom was working a lot of hours and he was working at a distance, most of that fell onto me. And so I've found for myself, I just can't manage that much inventory and still feel like I'm doing a good job being a good mom and, keeping up on the house how I'd like to. And so for me, it's just an inventory thing. And so the less inventory I have to manage, the better our household runs. And how do you argue with that, right? I mean, really, that's a very logical reason to get rid of all your stuff, right? And so that's been very helpful, again, for people that I want to take along on the journey with me. My mom, my sister, Tom. It was very important that while we were choosing to simplify our lifestyle, that I was still maintaining my relationship with them, and I really didn't want to do anything to offend them. Now, does that mean I kept every gift and everything that was given to me from them? No. But again, I tried to take them along on the journey with me, so it wasn't like they were just like shocked every time they came to our house and everything was gone, right? But those were people I wanted to have those conversations with. Other people that maybe, like my neighbor that makes a passing comment, somebody else that is not really involved in our life, you can just I'm fine with just being like, oh yeah, it's not for everybody. And I don't feel like I have to defend myself or explain all of my values to them. All right, so the last one is that, well, that's not minimalist. And so I will not forget my very first video that I put here on YouTube was about simplifying kids' clothes. And so I'm just sitting on the couch. I made the video on my phone. It was my first video, right? And so I'm just sitting there showing how you can simplify your kids' clothes really quickly, like 10 minutes. It's a great system. And even though the video looks a little outdated, it still works perfectly. And I'll never forget, like at first the comments like were so friendly and they're like, this is so helpful. This is such a good idea. And I'm like, okay, this feels good. I think I'm onto something. And then the comment came in, well, you have throw pillows. That's not minimalist. And so inevitably, if you are pursuing this lifestyle, at some point, someone is going to say, well, that's not minimalist. That's not minimalist. Having Christmas decorations isn't minimalist. Buying a new shirt isn't minimalist. I'll tell you what's interesting to me and then how I respond to this. What's interesting to me is that there is actually no written definition of minimalism as it pertains to a lifestyle or a way that you manage your home. There's actually no definition of it. If you look up minimalist, it talks about architectural style and like interior design style and also an artistic style. It doesn't talk about what we're talking about of applying it to a lifestyle. So the first thing is that there is actually no definition to it, which, I don't know. If you're feeling snarky, you might just tell people that, well, there's actually no definition, so it is what it is. But I usually reply to this and say, you've heard this, right? Like, well, what we enjoy about it is that we get to choose what it means to us and only keeping the things in our house that really matter to us and that we want to maintain and take care of. More recently, too, I think you've maybe heard of this idea of essentialism. And so sometimes they'll say, perhaps minimalism isn't the right term. Maybe essentialism is it, where we're just really choosing what's important to us as a family and what we like to have in our house, what makes it feel warm and welcoming, but still super easy to take care of and to maintain. And so again, it kind of just depends, like if you feel like you owe someone an explanation or not. But this has been a tricky one. And I'm aware of it often too. I mean, okay, I bought a pumpkin at Target, like, is that minimalist, right? But I really enjoyed it, and Marie kind of would talk about like, well, does it spark joy? And I don't necessarily use that principle for everything as a way to declutter my house because I would keep way more. There would be way more things that spark joy that I would keep. But what also sparks joy to me is having our house being super simplified. So I don't know, we call it minimalist. And if that's not the right term, I guess who cares, right? But that question does come up fairly frequently. And really for me, my goal with all of this, with our YouTube channel and the other stuff we do, is not to win over every single person in the world. I just want to put information out there for those of you who are interested in it, are looking for a different way to live, who want to simplify, who see the benefits of it and have gotten a taste of it, and then you want to go further. And I've said this before, but I just remember when we started out, it was Joshua Becker and the Minimalists, like they were the only ones talking about this. And I just remember, I'm just like, I just want to know how many forks you have, like how many bath towels, like how far can we really go with simplifying shoes and all of that stuff. And so my hope is just to continue to put out helpful information for those of you who want it, and the rest, it's fine, right? It's totally fine. So with that being said, if you haven't subscribed, we would love it. I know that these videos still show up in your feed, whether you're subscribed or not. So it is helpful to us if you do actually subscribe, but it's your own decision. I'm not going to tell you what to do. A thumbs up is always helpful as well. We love you. We'll show you that dumpster coming up this weekend, and you can decide for yourself if it's right or wrong that we're filling up the landfill. But at this point, it is what it is. So I love you. I hope you have a really good day, and I will see you again soon.